G'day expats and welcome to another episode of Expat Chat, episode 149 today. And as always, I'm joined with my friend, mentor, mate, co-host, the managing director for the Europe, Middle East and Africa's region, Brett Evans. Good morning, Brett. How are you?
G'day, James, mate. All well, thanks. All well. And for the folks on the call who haven't heard the silky smooth tunes of Mr. James Ridley, he's my colleague. If you can see him on the side of the video or on the other side of your earbuds, James is the managing director for the APAC region. G'day, mate.
G'day, mate. And I don't know how silky smooth my voice will be in the next couple of weeks as I'll be going on some very
Yeah,
short paternity
countdown.
leave.
It's a countdown, isn't it? So for folks out there, James is about to have his first, and for those parents out there, we all know that what was like. But the best thing ever I did, was become a parent. But you do question yourself in the first, especially 6 months.
Yes, I've got lots of family and friends that'll keep me sane, so we can't
Yeah.
wait. It's going to be a surprise as well, so we don't know what we're having, so we are very, very excited. That nursery just has a lot of neutral colours, a lot of beiges at the moment, so
Yep.
we can't wait.
No, fantastic, mate. And let's get the jingle out of the way for the folks out there who love their compliance. All the information that we're going to share with you good folks today should be treated as informational and educational purposes only. Please do not construe this as personal advice. If you do need to get personal advice, speak to a specialist like Atlas.
Absolutely, mate. And today I thought, why don't we do a bit of a session on wills and estate planning. Recently, we've been updating our wills and estate plans. Hardest question we were asked was, guardianship, guardians for the kids in the future. And it's an interesting one because you take a step back and you go through the different layers of your family and
It's
go,
very morbid, isn't it?
oh, it's hard as well. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
do we want our kids raised
Who
by
don't
them?
I like? Who don't I like in my family?
How are they going to turn out?
Yeah.
Uh, so,
My kids are shit. I'm
I
going to
mean,
give them to this person.
so there's that layer to it, but obviously when you're doing a comprehensive estate plan, normally it includes a lot of different legal documents. You've got your will, but then obviously you've got your EPOA. If there's kids involved, guardianship is a big one as well, and then advanced health directives if you're going to that extent, which is really important, especially as we get older. I think recently I've seen a couple of clients that have gone through the phase of updating their wills and estate plans due to family dynamics changing, or it's been brought on by maybe one of their loved ones passing away and, going, oh shit, we don't have an up-to-date will. That one's
Yeah.
from 1998 and it was done by Australia Post, your DIY version, which is usually pretty rubbish. So this is why we're talking about it today, because often it's something that gets left in the background. It's put on a pedestal that it's this huge task. It's going to take months. We have to make all these serious decisions. But I will say this, when you are working with a professional, which knows exactly what they're doing, it makes it a lot more, I suppose, you're a lot more productive getting it done, but it doesn't take as long as you think, to be honest. So I'd highly recommend it if you don't have a will. If you are overseas, obviously an expat, and you need to speak to someone that works with expats, let us know. We've got some great professionals that work in the space that help when it comes to estate planning.
Mate, spot on. And I think that's the probably the biggest myth that I see on the estate planning side with expats is it's okay. I've got an international will that I paid some random person. Just folks out there, there's no such thing as an international will. There has to be a will registered in a local court of that jurisdiction in that country.
Mm,
So the best way to think about it is, and I've seen a big change here in the UAE as in the past, especially pre-COVID, the UAE and the Middle East in general was seen as a short-term destination, 2 to 3 years in the
mm,
sandpit, make some bank and get the hell out of there after a couple of summers.
yeah,
Now people are buying property here. Now people are spending time here, indefinite time. And the conversation's changed. So now people are starting to explore that side of it. And the common question that I'm getting here locally in the UAE is, I've got a will in Australia. Can I use that in the UAE? Now, the answer is yes and no. So in the absence of any other will, any decent court will factor in another will, but there's
yeah,
no guarantees with that. So when it comes to having a will in Australia, your estate could present that will in a foreign court, but there's uncertainties, and it may not be the change of distant laws or regulations, Sharia law, common law. There's so many different permutations to it. So what we often like to say is you want to have a will in every country you're in, from
Yeah,
an asset point of view or from a presence point of view. If in the UAE, obviously Sharia law is a big thing here, but you can manage that. Even if you don't own property here and you only have about a month's worth of salary here, but if you've got kids, there needs to be that guardianship consideration. If you have property
absolutely.
in Dubai, you need to have a will here. So a proper full will. And all the other countries around the world are the same, pure and simple.
Yeah.
You can leave it to chance. Um, Not recommended.
No, and I mean, not having a will at all, it does make it very difficult back in Australia, especially if most of your assets are here because the intention is to retire here, or you do retire, but you never had a will drawn up. It does leave your loved ones with a bit of a mess to clean up, and they have to obviously go through maybe the system and apply to the courts and goes through intestacy, and that can take time, and usually that can be costly as well, because usually the state is charging fees to the actual estate as it gets wound up, and it can just be a lengthy process. I've had to deal with it previously, and you're just sort of butting your head against a wall, to be honest, dealing with some of the government officials. So uh, and it's often referred to with a will or estate plan. It's essentially your last love letter, I should say,
Mm.
to your loved ones, because you've made all the hard decisions for them whilst you're still obviously alive, you've still got capacity. So it removes all these difficult decisions, and obviously they're just following the wishes that you've put in this will and the estate plan, and obviously all the beneficiaries as well. But not only that, when it comes to a will and estate plan, just remember, like, there are different assets, different structures, which don't often fall under a will or an estate. So a good example of this is actually Australian superannuation. It will only fall into your estate if that's what you've put on your binding death benefit nomination. And a lot of the time when I think we're probably bringing on new clients and we're reviewing superannuation funds and checking out all their retirement assets, I'm very shocked sometimes the amount of individuals that don't actually have a beneficiary on their account at all.
Actually, can I give you a funny one?
Yeah, go for
It's funny, but
it.
it's not. It's funny, but it's not. But I had a good giggle with this, and so did the client at the time, because we averted a major disaster. It's
Yep.
important to always review your binding death benefit nominations. And I'll tell you why. We're seeing
Mm.
more and more marriages break up. We had a client come
Sad
in last
fact.
year. It's
Yep.
a sad fact. I mean, you never want to see that, especially when it involves kids. Client come in last year doing a review of his super fund, and one of those reviews is, does he have a BDN and who's nominated? And I looked at it and I've gone, I don't recognize that name. So as part of our review process, I reached out to him and said, who's this? And he goes, that's my ex and I hate her. So if he passed away,
Yeah.
all of that money, uncontestable by in court,
Yeah,
uncontestable,
that's right.
all that money
Yeah.
would have gone to his ex who he hates.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Because
yeah,
and you actually you drill down on a really important point there. So whenever it comes to paying out a death benefit from a superannuation fund, that's governed by the SIS Act, which is very different to family law and estate law,
yeah,
especially the states. So if your binding death benefit nomination has been made to an ex as a spouse, or previous spouse, you really do need to get that fixed up. If you're unsure, log on to your superannuation fund, not, navigate to your account details and look at what your beneficiary is. If you don't have one, get one, because it is a very lengthy process for your loved
yeah,
ones to apply for the release of those benefits. And then even with a nominating a beneficiary on your superannuation account, there's also different layers. So if you're someone that's receiving an account-based pension, as an example, you can nominate a beneficiary, or you can nominate what's called a reversionary pension. And that is a type of nomination, but what it allows is your pension to continue as is upon your passing to your spouse, or essentially your beneficiary that you're choosing. There's only obviously a set couple of categories in which we can nominate for a reversionary pension. But the benefit of that is your income stream stays in this tax-free environment. So does your account balance, and it just continues paying out that monthly income to, say, your spouse. The benefit of that is the amount and the lump sum isn't being paid out So it stays in this tax-free or concessionally taxed environment until it's fully wound down, until your loved one then switches over and starts taking a pension from that one. But that's often one that we see missed, but you can only normally do so once you've commenced a pension, nominate that reversionary pension. It's not beforehand.
And as an addendum to that, you raise a very good point as well too. We see, I would say most, I'd say a lot of expats fall into. When you go through and look at non-binding and binding death benefit nominations, you can't put your relatives on there, your brother, your sister, your parents. So they have to be a spouse or a financial dependent. That's the only way that this will 100% be done. If you don't have a spouse or a financial dependent, you can nominate 100% to the legal representative, who essentially is the executor of your estate. And that's when they use
Yep.
the will to then tell them, give my brother, my sister, my parents this money. So
Yep.
what you got to make sure is trustees of super funds are black and white. They don't have a sense of humor. They don't have, they probably sit in rooms with no windows. They do not have the ability to provide spatial thought when it comes to paying out these things. What it says in the document, if it doesn't tick the box, they won't do it. And then all the dramas come through. So you don't need to have a will in Australia if you don't have assets in Australia apart from super or shares. Shares is a great one because you can have a joint account by way of survivorship. If someone dies, the other person gets it. But if you are concerned, having a will does bound that out. One of the
Mm.
biggest mistakes that I do see when clients do wills, especially overseas and they have a will in Australia, is there's a final line in that will that says this is the final will and it supersedes all other wills in existence. You can't have that line in a foreign will when you have an Australian will because suddenly that
Mm.
Australian bill is now null and void.
Yep.
So you need to work with someone when you're getting that foreign will who understands you have an Australian will and it should be read in addendum to that will, like a mirror will. That's what we call it.
Yep.
So that's a very important point as well too. I've seen that happen all the time and say, well, you need to get this redone because otherwise the other one's not valid. I'm like, what? But I spent, sort of 5,000
X- XYZ
dollars.
getting it
Yeah,
done.
exactly. So, because then you got to go and register it in courts and there's a whole process behind it. It is probably the least sexy thing about managing money, but it is the
Yep.
most important thing when it comes to, as you say, giving that final love letter to your loved ones.
Yep.
It's the best legacy you can live. Just, it's a
Abs-
document that I said to my wife when we did it ourselves. I said, this is the most boring thing we'll do. There's nothing exciting about it. There's no positive thing. It's all negative. If I die, this is what happens and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
But I said, it's a document you put on the shelf and hope you never need for a very, very long period of time.
That's right. And I mean, I like the concept of making all the hard decisions right now.
Yeah.
Obviously based on your family dynamic, your dynamic even with your friends, but making all the hard decisions now, and you feel reassured that, okay, like that means we know exactly how things are going to get, say, paid out or distributed, and that puts us at ease. Obviously, if you have children, that's always going to be a difficult one. The guardianship, maybe initially you nominate your own parents, the grandparents, but they are going to get older, and there is going
Yeah.
to be a stage where they're not going to be the ones that can be guardians anymore. So then you're sort of obviously looking in your peripheries where it's like, okay, well, do we nominate our brothers or sisters? Are
Yep.
we nominating friends, family? So very hard decisions. But once they're done, just remember it's rare that you have to go back and update the will unless you're having a significant life event.
Yep.
So that's a really important one. And then different assets, remember, I guess are treated very differently. So let's consider the main residence and you own that asset jointly. Well, that asset, because it's owned jointly, has the right to survivorship applied to it, which means if I pass away, then my wife will automatically have the property moved 100% in her name. Whereas if you own assets where it's property and your tenants in common, then your share goes into your estate and then it gets obviously carved up based on your letter of wishes or who the beneficiaries are. Um, Whilst we probably don't have time to talk about it on today's episode, having conversations with your parents as they get older and maybe the assets that you might receive and the different types of CGT events that can apply when you're a non-resident beneficiary.
K3 event.
Um,
Yep.
that's exactly right. We've seen a few K3 events play out, and unfortunately, it does have the ability to create an inequitable distribution or division of assets because of the tax that needs to be paid by the non-resident, whereas the Australian tax residents don't have to pay anything. They inherit the cost base, but they don't have to pay anything upon receiving the asset, which again can create this inequitable
Yeah,
distribution or division of assets. So it's something we need to be mindful of.
definitely. Yeah. For those folks who don't know what a K3 event is, jump on our website atlasport.com and search up K3, letter K, then three, and you can sort of, we've got some pretty good examples and some articles there that run into all the bits and pieces when it comes to what you need to be aware of. Obviously, we have the largest transition of wealth between older generations and younger generations occurring right now. So it's becoming a very popular topic amongst a lot of folks.
Yeah,
And the biggest thing we always see is it's once again a morbid conversation. You don't want to go to your parents, hey,
it is.
I want money, but how are you going to give it to me? I think it's something that I've recommended clients use our blog article to send to their parents just to say, hey, I came across this article, I'm not sure if you're aware, and just leave it there. And if the
Yeah.
parents, and most people do, give a shit about their kids and want the right thing done, they'll then go talk to their solicitor showing our article about the topic. Um, it sort of makes a difficult conversation a little bit easier to have.
Yeah, if it's a plan for now rather than later, it just when the terrible time comes, the hard decisions have already been made, and I think that's what we're trying to communicate today. If we don't have a will, or we've got a very old will, or we've done something which is very old, such as the binding death benefit nomination on our superannuation, give it a review. It's bound to take you 5 minutes, especially on the super item, not even 5 minutes. Just log in and check what it says. Make sure it applies to your situation, whether it's going 100% to your legal representative or 100% or 50% or whatever it might be to financial dependency relationships or your spouse de facto. If you don't have a will, maybe time to get one if you're starting to accumulate some assets.
Definitely. And if you've gone through change of family circumstances, you've added a kid that's not included in the previous will, you've been divorced, you don't want that person to receive your assets. There's these things are happening all the time, and it's just keep a weathered eye on that. So, man, I think people have got the idea. They need to do a bit of homework and said morbid conversations, not sexy, but it can make or break a very difficult situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think you're spot on. We'll leave it there. Quick shout out. We've got some upcoming events coming out along very quickly, as early as next week, actually. This time next week, I should say. We've got the webinar. So it's a moving to the UAE or Dubai or Abu Dhabi webinar, what every Australian expat needs to know. Make sure you register for that one. That's forthcoming. That's obviously going to be held by yourself, Brett, and Adam Prentice, one of our other advisors over in the UAE. Get there, some great things coming from that webinar, some great learnings as well. If you haven't seen the registration links come out, then please jump on our website, atlaswealth.com/events, and you'll see the registration links right there.
Definitely. And we've got a lot of seminars coming up in September, October, November. So make sure you follow the socials, make sure you follow the website. And mate, I think we leave the good folks there.
Sounds good. Thanks for tuning in on another episode, guys.
Thanks, James. See you, mate.